Good morning. Today is Thursday, February 20th, 2020, and you're watching the Daily Mix TV. Hi, my name is Sean Patrick Hillman. Retail giant L Brands has sold the majority control of Victoria's Secret to private equity firm Sycamore Partners, making it a private company with a $1.1 billion valuation. Billionaire Leslie Wexner, longest-serving chief executive in the S&P 500, will also step down as CEO and chairman after a very challenging period. Executive Andrew Meslow will take over. Now, as a result of this, L Brands is going to be left to just run the Bath & Body Works chain. It's interesting to see how this has developed, this story, and what's been going on. I mean, let's not forget that Victoria's Secret has had a lot of challenges lately, and Wexner, who has long been revered as a marketing genius in the retail world, specifically the mall-based retail segment, has certainly taken his bumps over the last couple of years. Now, after all, Victoria's Secret did lead the charge for a long time. Despite that success, Wexner has found himself in hot water over and over again over the last several years. L Brands had been accused of having a misogynist culture and being too old-fashioned. Now, sadly, this is true, given the amazing losses at Victoria's Secret. They failed to evolve, and I mean, we've talked about this a lot. They failed to evolve with the times from both a marketing and an execution point of view. They never really embraced different body types other than the very stereotypical model on the catwalk look. And the challenge there is when you've got a country and a customer base whose waist is expanding or getting a little more curvy, not necessarily getting bigger, but certainly parts getting bigger, they never really embraced that. And because of that, their losses started to mount. Then on top of it, they had accusations of sexual misconduct, of sexual harassment, as well as a myriad of other business challenges. So for Victoria's Secret, I do hope that that Sycamore Partners doesn't do what they typically do with brands that they acquire. Typically, they'll sell off the most valuable assets, strip it down, and make a massive amount of profit. I can't blame them. That's their job. That's what Sycamore does. But Victoria's Secret has been one of those brands that really has withstood the test of time. This is a difficult period for them. And with a new owner, the hope is that they're going to put more marketing behind it and finally wake up and smell the 21st century. Oh, man, Blue Apron, the meal kit industry has had such a challenge over the last couple of years. And unfortunately, the loss leader lately in this, Blue Apron, is considering a sale or raising a new round of financing. The once popular meal kit platform continues to lose customers. During its fourth quarter earnings on Monday, the meal kit company reported that they had 351,000 customers through the fourth quarter of 19. That's down from 557,000 a year before. Now, like subscription box services, meal kit programs are getting killed by grocery chains who fought back and launched their own meal kit platforms. The other issue, frankly, is one of cost. So, subscription box programs were a trend that catapulted and skyrocketed through the ceiling like no one had expected. You had Birchbox doing so well. And then the retailers started to fight back. The same is true in meal kit. Meal kit programs unto themselves were so popular for a short period of time. You had this explosive growth. Then you had, the other brand that had gone on to Shark Tank that Kevin O'Leary had invested in. And next thing you know, they're everywhere, plated. But now you look at Blue Apron, who, started doing deals with grocery chains and things like that. Next thing you know, they're in a lot of trouble because they've lost a lot of customers. They put a pause on marketing. They didn't put out enough messaging and programming to keep growing their customer base because their customer acquisition costs were so high. They were relying on grocery to push that. Unfortunately, grocery chains and, frankly, restaurants fought back, and they fought back very well, to the tune where now Blue Apron is in a lot of trouble. So we'll keep an eye on this one for you and report back when there's more news. Morgan Stanley has reached a deal to buy discount brokerage E-Trade Financial for roughly $13 billion. It would also grant Morgan Stanley access to over 5 million clients and $360 billion in client assets. Retail brokerage such as E-Trade, meanwhile, have been hit by price wars, with Charles Schwab scrapping commissions for U.S. stock trading in October. That is a big, big deal. The challenge in this space, again, is one of cost. At the end of the day, there's a reason why Schwab has survived as long as it has. They know how to appeal to the consumer and their wallet. By engaging in a price war ahead of competitors, basically pushing the first shot across the bow, Schwab was able to steal a lot of clients from other brokerages, and they are making bank on it, whereas the competition is now left to play catch-up. Let's hope that Morgan Stanley can use E-Trade to leverage more customers, because frankly, when I say it's one of cost, let's go back to the meal kit story as an example. It's more expensive when you're buying meal kits with respect to, convenience, and when you look at your cost per meal. As advertised, it's theoretically cheaper. In reality, it's not. Because if you've got stuff in your pantry and you're making a chicken dish, a lot of those costs are already paid for. So your cost per meal technically is lower. Whereas the advertised price is a little misleading because you're still paying for those ingredients. In the case of a brokerage, for Schwab to go out and kill commissions on U.S. stock trading last October, their numbers went through the roof. Everybody else stayed flat or down because of that shot across the bow. Now you've got brokerages left and right killing commissions, all of these things, trying to play catch up. So for Morgan Stanley to do this, very smart move. I really do hope it works out well for them. General Mills wants to make breakfast cereal popular again. In the face of changing consumer taste, it appears to be paying off. But does it really? As shoppers increasingly choose protein-filled breakfasts over cereal or skip breakfast altogether, the food maker has introduced a $13 almond-based cereal box called Morning Summit. Excuse me, I'm still getting over this cold. Really, really nasty one. They also launched Blueberry Cheerios and a probiotic cereal. Now, the healthier products are helping lift its sales in the category this year, but there's no sign that this is actually a new behavior. There are signs that it's more of a trend. The wider U.S. cereal market saw its sales flat in 2019 and had been declining for several years prior to that. So they may have stemmed the bleeding for now. However, it is important to note, when you look at cereal overall, in the 1980s, as an example, cereal companies like General Mills, like Post, what they would do is they would partner up with licensing firms to come out with specific products against, let's say, a popular movie release, or, a specific cartoon platform that was very popular. They would actually develop a cereal around that. The challenge today is, because you have such a health-conscious consumer, they're looking less and less at sugar-laden product and more at protein-filled product. So cereal companies have not evolved with the times. They're trying to, and they're way behind the eight ball on that. So the question becomes, does looking at older marketing tactics like partnering up with a licensing firm or looking at popular entertainment intellectual property, does that make sense? And can you do it in a protein way as opposed to a sugar way? Well, I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. You'd need to do some research, and some really, really hard data points would have to come from that to justify the expense. But all I know is what they've been doing historically over the last 5 years hasn't worked. And a $13 box of cereal to me sounds more like a coastal play, New York and LA or Miami and so on, as opposed to Midwest. I mean, when you look at the heartland of this country, they're not going to spend $13 on a box of cereal. They have a hard enough time spending $5.50 on a box of cereal. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Dairy Farmers of America, the biggest U.S. dairy farming cooperative, has rescued Dean Foods. They've offered to buy most of the milk processor's plants for $425 million. Now, Dean did seek bankruptcy protection last year. They've been a victim of slumping sales of milk and competition from plant-based alternatives and other beverages. And look, we've talked about this ad nauseum on the Daily Mix. At the end of the day, its role, too, as a major buyer of U.S. milk was under threat. You had what was it? You had Walmart, who came out with their own dairy processing plants. You have, all of these plant-based alternatives like oat milk and soy milk and so on that were driving the market. And next thing you know, milk is literally, traditional cow milk is in the toilet. Now, the Dairy Farmers of America said that its offer, which is yet to be approved in bankruptcy court, would put some stability into the value of Dean's assets and milk market in general. Now, given the size of the dairy industry in the U.S., roughly $40 billion, to lose the biggest player will only hurt dairy farmers. So Dairy Farmers of America coming in this way is perfect, and I can't wait to see what they do with Dean. KitKat is bringing the flavor of a classic birthday cake to its well-known bar form. Owner Hershey announced the launch of its new limited edition birthday cake bars, which include sprinkles and are flavored with white cream. Available nationwide beginning in April, KitKat Birthday Cake Bar will come in a 1.5 ounce size that retails for $1.09. KitKat is one of those candy brands that has really withstood the test of time. They know how to roll out limited edition flavors. They know how to do interesting programming. They've partnered a lot with, entertainment properties, much as a lot of Hershey brands have. And for them to come out with a birthday cake, classic birthday cake flavor, which is still very popular right now, is a very, very smart move. Look, I've been a fan my whole life. Can't wait to see what the sales results on this one are. All right, 2 of the world's biggest food chains are debuting reusable coffee cups in the U.S. Beginning this week in San Francisco and Palo Alto, California, both McDonald's and Starbucks will offer smart reusable cups with chips for tracking them as part of the NextGen Cup challenge. The chains are also testing compostable and recyclable single-use cups, but the focus is really on reuse. It is the least impactful approach with respect to the environment. They're going to collect, clean, and track the redistribution of cups, and believe it or not, I can't even believe I'm saying this, you might actually end up getting yours back. Here's the funny thing about recycling. No one seems to want to talk about the fact that the chemicals and heat that are used in recycling processes are not good for the environment. So are we actually doing more damage than good? Well, yes and no. I mean, when you think about the amount of plastic, when you think about the amount of paper that gets recycled, it really is important, and it really has done some good for the environment. The challenge that I have is the chemicals and the heat process that they use really is not good for local environments. Think about this. Where do all of those chemicals go that they use to break down all of the food sediment that's in glass or plastic containers? Well, in many cases, it ends up in your local waterway. Now, let's use dairy as an example. Back in the day, the milkman used to deliver milk bottles to your home, or you would go to the grocery store and purchase those bottles. Then you would bring those milk bottles back to the store once you're done with them, or give them to the milkman, and he would give you new ones with fresh milk in it. They would take those bottles, clean and sanitize them for use again. Instead, today, the majority of milk is sold in cardboard or plastic containers. The issue, again, is an economic one. The milk producers switched to cartons because it was cheaper at that time. Then, when they had no choice but to use recyclable cartons because of new laws, and frankly increased pressure from consumers, their costs went back up. Then they passed that cost on to the consumer. That's one of the issues in dairy right now. You've got a higher cost, and frankly, a lot of people would prefer, less fattening alternatives like plant-based milk, that kind of thing. So at the end of the day, was it the right decision to go cheaper on packaging for profitability? Well, at that time, yes, it was. Now, not so much. Because when you've got companies that are looking at milk delivery in bottles again, you know that things are changing and not necessarily for the better. If they go back to milk delivery bottles, that makes a lot of sense. And, oh yes, life is a cyclical beast. As to McDonald's and Starbucks, I'm going to be interested to see what the data points are on this when they're done with the program, because the reality is Starbucks is not exactly an honest company. They don't admit their mistakes, and they do a lot of cover-ups. They try to be the social good guy, but in fact, they end up screwing over local communities because of the cost of their coffee. Whereas McDonald's is a cheaper alternative, and frankly, a lot of people find its flavors to be a lot better. At least McDonald's admits when they make mistakes, and they disclose that appropriately. So I would believe data from McDonald's before Starbucks any day of the week and twice on Sunday. Time will tell. All right, for this week's Throwback Thursday, do you remember this? Right, Norwegian synth-pop band a-ha's Take On Me just crossed the 1 billion YouTube viewing threshold. That is only the second 80s video to achieve this milestone, behind Guns N' Roses' Sweet Child of Mine. All right, folks, I'm out of time. My name is Sean Patrick Hillman. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Daily Mix TV. If you have any questions, comments, or story ideas, please email thedailymixtv@gmail.com. Have a great day, folks. We'll see you tomorrow on Friday.